Having hosted some of the great dramas of the era, North America, in the end, played host to the greatest of them all. At the height of their glory, when the wildlife of the continent had achieved wondrous new levels of diversity and creation, it all ended in a geologic instant. It was an abrupt end to a period that had seen so many renewals over the eons, but perhaps it is fitting. The story of the era contains no memories of obsolete failures quietly fading into oblivion. When the history of North America is finally written, the period between 245 and 65 million years ago will stand as a time when life pulled out all the stops. The dinosaurs went out at the top of their game. As the dawn of the Mesozoic slowly broke across the face of the planet, it revealed a quiet and lonely Earth. The end of the Permian Period had seen 19 out of every 20 animal species wiped out. Those that were left were, for the most part, small animals. Some had managed to stay in the background while their larger neighbors died out. Others were simply lucky to have been generalized animals. This means that they were able to squeak through the extinctions because their lack of specialization made them less vulnerable to sudden environmental changes. The end of the Permian Period had coincided with a number of factors that combined to create a world in distress, so many in fact that these events defined the end of the period. A general lowering of sea levels eliminated many shallow marine environments. A vast outpouring of lava from volcanic eruptions on the plains of northern Asia pumped millions of tons of noxious gases into the atmosphere. Finally, a sharp rise in global carbon dioxide levels caused by an increase in deep ocean circulation wreaked havoc on marine and terrestrial habitats alike. These events created an environmental catastrophe. Life all across the planet was decimated, both on the land and in the seas. Many forms that had thrived in marine ecosystems for hundreds of millions of years, such as the trilobites, disappeared completely. On land, long-established groups, such as the therapsids, the mammal-like reptiles, saw their ranks either severely depleted, or in the case of the pelycosaurs, the fin-backed reptiles, completely annihilated. The period that follows an environmental upheaval is typically a time of quiet and rebirth. This was the case at the beginning of the Triassic. The wildlife that survived the Permian extinctions found itself on a planet with one huge landmass and one massive ocean. The world of the past was gone, and with it went the established and mature ecosystems of which its inhabitants had been a part. Those that emerged from the transition, a few kinds of therapsids, early members of the reptilian archosaurs, various other groups of reptiles, and some amphibians, were thrust onto a stage that had been cleared of all its traditional players. The roles of predator and prey had to be recast. The hierarchies that had developed in previous dynasties of animals had disappeared, and what was left was a world of varied habitats, extending from pole to pole, with very little in the way of animal life to fill them. When Pangaea formed at the beginning of the Permian Period 290 million years ago, the separate land masses that created the supercontinent brought along their own collections of plants and animals, which were then free to intermix and interact. In the process, some habitats were destroyed or eliminated, while others were created or changed. For a time, life went through a sorting out period, as some species adapted to the new conditions, while others disappeared. Although there had been other supercontinents in the past, the early Triassic was the first time in Earth's history when a supercontinent stood poised to be conquered by populations of new vertebrates. Animals that could disperse rapidly throughout the virgin territory, and literally take over the world.